There's an old Buddhist story of a young monk who says to his master, "Master, how long does it take to achieve enlightenment?" And the master replies, 20 years. And so the monk says, "But what if I try really, really hard? I double down on my efforts." And the master says, 40 years. Now you can probably see where I'm going with this analogy. If we were to swap the word enlightenment for recovery, the principle would still apply. Now I am going to talk about time frames in this video and why it seems like some people are able to do it quicker than others and what that might mean for you. But first of all, I just want to address this idea of trying harder, because I was stuck in this for the longest time. That was how I was trying to recover, was by trying harder. I always find it really difficult to answer the question, how long did it take you to recover? Because I feel like I was trying to stop this behavior from the moment I realized what was going on. I was always trying to recover. So how to define that time frame is quite challenging for me. But I carried this belief for the longest time that the reason why I hadn't managed to stop, I'm not trying hard enough. And I've spoken before about a CBT therapist with whom I was doing everything I was told to do, and my binging was continuing. And she said to me when I was leaving one day, "Sarah, I really want you to try this week." And I felt a huge amount of shame because I believed her, and I carried that for years. And somebody only this week commented on a video I'd spoken about this and said, "Actually, I agree with your therapist. I think you should have been trying harder. I think we all need to try really hard if we want to stop this behavior." The comment had a whole, we need to toughen up kind of vibe. And I get it. Believe me, I get it. And I'm not suggesting that recovery is a passive process that doesn't take effort and work. But the reason why this just try harder was so problematic, at least for me, and maybe you resonate with this, was my version of trying harder was trying to control my appetite. I was just in a constant battle with my appetite that I just felt was so out of control. And of course, what I didn't realize at the time was by continuing to battle with my appetite was the very thing that kept fueling my binge eating. One of the things, I should say, that kept fueling my binge eating. So I could try harder, but I was trying harder kind of in the wrong place, and I didn't realize it. Maybe you feel like you've been trying to recover for a really long time, and you watch recovery stories online where it seems like people just made this decision and stopped binging, either by stopping restriction or cutting out certain foods. And so it looks like it happened really fast. Now, if you've been following my content, you'll know that my stance on this is a food freedom model, because I found that anytime I tried to cut foods out, my binging just increased tenfold. There was nothing that would trigger my binging more than trying to cut out foods. And of course, kept blaming myself for that, kept trying harder just to do it, and again, I'm still stuck in this cycle. Here's what I've noticed about people who go down the food freedom route and who seem to do this quite quickly. On the whole, it seems to be people for whom restriction was the biggest part of it, or dieting was the biggest part of it. So we know that for the majority of people, dieting and restriction is part of what triggers binge eating. But how much it's that varies from person to person. There might be someone for whom the only reason they binge is a reaction to the restriction. So really, binge eating isn't even the problem, it's the solution to the problem of restriction for this person. So if this person is able to get to a point where they realize that, and that that's true for them, and they're able to stop restricting, there might be a little bit of overeating afterwards, and then it just settles down because they have removed the trigger for them. So therefore it does happen quite quickly because they're no longer being triggered to binge anymore, assuming they can get to the place where they give up restriction, of course, which isn't easy for everyone. Now, I would say that I'm someone for whom restriction was probably about 50%. So when I decided to stop dieting and chasing weight loss, my binging reduced significantly, but I was still compulsively eating, still felt quite bingy around food. I was still numbing with food because there was such an emotional aspect for me around the food. So giving up restriction helped. It was step one, but it wasn't everything. And for the longest time as well, I thought that recovery meant weight loss. I couldn't have even imagined or separated the idea of no longer struggling with binge eating, but not losing weight. Because also I assumed that The minute I stopped binge eating, weight was just going to fall off me anyway. When we're talking about there are other triggers for binging, let's say your trigger for binging is overwhelm, stress, loneliness. Maybe you feel like it's all manner of emotional experiences that you find difficult to manage without turning to food. How do we remove all those triggers from our lives? Well, I don't think we can. So for those of us for whom we are going to continue to have these triggers in our lives that could make us go to food, work is going to look slightly different. And so for people I work with who say, my binging is emotional or my eating is emotional, quite often they think that the answer is, I'm supposed to just feel my feelings. I'm supposed to be able to just sit with my feelings. That's what I need to learn to do. No, I don't think that's helpful. I don't use the phrase sitting with your feelings, because sitting with your feelings can often look like spiraling. Often our feelings don't feel safe. There's part of our brain that is panicking and too stressed by the feeling to allow yourself to just sit down and feel it. So what is it instead? The answer is learning to regulate our emotions in ways other than just food. So sometimes the most dysregulating thing could be to try to just force yourself to feel a feeling. We need to be able to regulate our emotional experience. The research offers that people who struggle with binge eating tend to be more avoidant of their feelings and less able to recognize what they're feeling. Now again, this isn't going to apply to everyone, but I do relate to this. Even now, my emotions don't always seem immediately obvious to me what they are. I often have to look at, okay, what's going on for me now? I have to inquire. So one of the tools that I use to regulate myself is the Rallick method that I lay out in my book, available on Amazon, but you can listen to it for free on YouTube. But that kind of thing works well for me because I tend to process cognitively. So if I can make my mind safe and understand and make sense of it in my mind, I feel safer and more regulated. Now, not everybody processes like that. Some people process much more somatically, in which case looking for a somatic approach, even looking up somatic exercises to make your body feel safe first before your thoughts can feel safer. Because regulation is about safety. It's about your body feeling safe and in homeostasis. And binge eating is the ultimate dysregulation. Right? Our appetite, this primal drive, has become dysregulated. For many of us, our emotional experience has become dysregulated. So the process of recovery is learning how to regulate. And in order to be able to do recovery quicker, is making sure, or doing our best to, focusing our energy on what we actually need to focus our energy on in order to heal. And that's difficult to do sometimes when we're in pain because we want the quick fix. And I feel that's why sometimes people get frustrated with my videos on my channel, because I'm not offering a quick fix. And it was the searching and the chasing of the quick fix that made it take longer for me. So you might be thinking, okay, well, what do I do now? Well, here's the shift I want to offer. Rather than saying to yourself, I need to just try not to be triggered into binging, taking some time to understand your triggers. And what is it that actually would need to change in those moments so that those triggers didn't take you over? If restriction is a trigger, that's where you need to be looking first. If like an emotional situation or something is a trigger, that's where to put your attention first. And not just putting your attention there when you're triggered, because you don't have any control normally when you're triggered. It's too late. But it's kind of between that. And that's the other thing I think with recovery is often people are just most focused on it when they've just binged. And then if you have a day or two where food recedes into the background, like you don't think about any of this stuff, and then bam, something happens and it takes you by surprise again and you're back binging again. And ultimately the thing that worked the most for me was changing my story about things. Being able to change our mind and what things mean and what we believe. And that comes through challenging our previous assumptions. Like my assumption that recovery and weight loss are the same thing. That was my assumption for the longest time. For as long as we're determined to hold on to our beliefs and what we think it should look like and what the outcome should be, that's where we get stuck too. I had one other analogy that I thought I might use, and that is, I don't know if you've ever seen these finger traps. And the idea is that you put your finger in the finger trap, and then when you try to get out of it, you can't. And so the more and more you pull to get out, the tighter the trap becomes. It's kind of like how spiders' webs work as well. The more the bug struggles, the more tightly bound up in the web. And that's what it is. Binge eating, it's a trap. So part of it is softening. And when we soften with the trap, we can start to figure out how to free ourselves. But it doesn't happen by trying to yank ourselves out. The quicker we try to do it, the more stuck we get. Another assumption I just want to challenge, because I think a lot of people hold it, is that recovery is going to be hard and difficult and painful and unpleasant. And I think even the process itself of recovery, learning about ourselves and even unlearning things about ourselves and what we believe, I think can be a satisfying process in and of itself. And if you can make the recovery process satisfying, that will speed it up. Because if you're like, I'll go through the pain of recovery in order to come out the other side where everything is finally okay, that's another thing that holds people back. So I wish you every good thing on this path, and I hope you find the answers that you need. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next video.